Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the September Cabinet of Shropshire Council. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and also recorded. We have various members of Cabinet in the room. We have some Cabinet members who unfortunately can't join us today, and we have one Cabinet member who's got such a bad cold he's actually joining us remotely because none of us want it, let's be honest. Okay, so let's go on to the agenda today. She said trying to find it. I'm going to be multitasking today, so do forgive me. Apologies for absence, Amanda.
We have apologies from Philip Butler, and as I said, Councillor Charlie is not permitted to vote today because he's joining the meeting remotely. Thank
you, Amanda. Just to make sure that everybody heard that, we have apologies from Graham Butler, who unfortunately can't be with us today, and we also have Steve Chalmers joining us remotely, so he will be unable to vote today. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests on any of the agenda items today? No, thank you. So we will move on. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 21st of July 2021. Do I have a proposer for those minutes? Thank you, Dean. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Motley. Any alterations to those required? I trust not. All those in favour of those minutes, please. Thank you. Item number 4, public question time. There is no public questions today, so we will move on to item number 5, which is members' question time. And the first question comes from Councillor Julian Dean, who is joining us remotely. Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
You can.
Yeah, in response to the Afghan crisis, I know many of us are looking in horror and considering what more this country could do. I'm writing to ask you about the plight of child refugees in our area. Could you let me know how many unaccompanied asylum seeking children are currently in care in our area, what percentage this is of our child population, and whether this is therefore the required 0.07%? Do we participate in the National Transfer Scheme rota, and if so, when are we next expecting to take more unaccompanied asylum seeking children? Research suggests that 1 in 10 asylum seekers crossing the Channel is an unaccompanied child. Will you commit to supporting the large number of unaccompanied child asylum seekers currently in hotels in the South East waiting for local authorities to offer them a placement? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. And responding to that question is Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight, portfolio holder for Children's Services and Education. Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you, Councillor Dean, for your question. In relation to support for unaccompanied asylum seeking children. As League Member for Children, I had already requested a full paper exploring this issue to be prepared for Cabinet. And this is timetabled for later on in the year to come forward. This will detail the position in full, but however, we'll answer your questions in turn. Children's Social Care and Safeguarding are working proactively with other local authorities in the West Midlands region to ensure that we offer safe homes for children who arrive unaccompanied. We have done so consistently over recent years and responded to children and young people as they have either arrived in Shropshire or where they have needed to be transferred from their arrival point. Initially, we took children and young people from Kent as they were the receiving local authority. In recent months, we have received children and young people directly from the Home Office Centre at the port. Unaccompanied asylum seeking children currently in our care are as follows. The percentage, as you've just highlighted, Councillor Dean, is 0.07% of looked after population, and this is not seen as a requirement. It is a measure to ensure equality across all local authorities. When local authorities reach that figure, they are able to no longer take additional children whilst other local authorities have space. It only covers children under 18 and does not reflect the over 18 population we continue to offer care and support to as care leavers. It is also a number that goes up and down depending on our looked after children population and the unaccompanied asylum seeking children when they become 18, and we have had a number of those this year. The number of children we are due to take on the rota is calculated on a range of measures to ensure equality across the region. To date, we have accepted to support more than our rota allocation of children and young people. Currently, our 0.07% allocation is approximately 40 children under 18. We will most likely fulfil that allocation by the end of the year. The National Transfer Scheme operates on a regional rota, and we accept children and young people when it is our region and then our turn to take a child. So they have been arriving here regularly in recent months. We have also supported other local authorities who have had larger numbers of asylum seekers in their area who are quarantining and taken their turn on a rota to support them. We have been and will continue to be committed to supporting unaccompanied asylum seeking children. Regionally, we work with the Home Office to meet the needs of the refugees as they are resettling. These children come from a wide range of countries, not just Afghanistan. Many children come from Afghanistan will come with a family and therefore will be resettled as a family. We take whichever children the Home Office identify as being in need of transferring to us. It is likely that obviously in the weeks and months ahead, more from Afghanistan will be coming. So currently we have 37 over 18, 17 under 18s, with 2 arrived weekend in the 27th of the 8th and 3 arriving at the end of August. So in total we have currently 59 young people. Since April 2021, we have taken 15 unaccompanied children, young people, of 13 have come to us through the National Transfer Scheme and 2 directly from the port. These children and young people have come from a range of countries. We are able to care for children and young people in a range of accommodation, including foster care, supported board and lodgings, and supported living. The Home Office organised the hotel accommodation for both adults and children coming into the UK, and if they require support from a local authority, they make contact with the council. As I said, a full paper on accompanied and asylum-seeking children and young people is timetabled for Cabinet later on in the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst-Knight, and I understand, I think that report's coming to the October Cabinet meeting, Councillor Dean. Do you have a supplementary?
Just thank you for the full reply. Just very briefly, is that report also dealing with families as well as children? Is the first thing, and the second thing is I'd just like to add congratulations to the work of Shropshire Supports Asylum Seekers. They've done some sterling work in collecting stuff from members of the public, and I think it'd be nice to note that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Hurst-Knight, is that
the report will focus on children.
The report is focusing on children at the moment.
National Transfer Scheme and children.
Okay, but I'd echo your comments regarding Shropshire Supports Refugees. They have done some sterling work, absolutely. Okay, moving on to the second question, which is from Councillor Basma, who joins us in the room today. Councillor Basma.
Thank you. My question is about highways and the North West Relief Road. Councillor Chalmers recently announced that Shropshire Council has applied to central government for more funding to finance the North West Relief Road. What is the current estimate of the funding needed to finance the North West Relief Road? 2, presumably the application to central government for more funding was contained in a letter addressed to the Department of Transport. Can you send me a copy of that letter or any other similar exchanges with central government? 3, when is the full business case likely to be published?
Thank you, Councillor Basma. It's great to have you in the room, but unfortunately Steve Chalmers is not in the room today, so we'll go online. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, David, for the questions. In regards to point 1 and point 3, I'll refer you to a question asked by one of your Lib Dem colleagues at Cabinet on June the 7th, which answered both questions, which were identical. The only change to that is that now the estimated cost of the road has reduced by £7 million as a result of the amendments to the planning application, which was published online last week. As the answer to part 2, you correctly, I was on the radio talking about North West Relief Road. What I think I said was we are considering asking the department for more funding. As of yet, we have not asked them for any more funding. But during the application for the Relief Road funding originally, as a part of the submission of the outline business case, that's published on the council website and it's still available today if you wish to visit it.
Thank you, Councillor Chalmers. Councillor Vasmer, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thanks very much. Yes, just a couple of points really. One is I was surprised that I didn't get a written answer like Councillor Dean got for his question. Two, that the estimates you said there was a 7 million reduction in the cost of the North West Relief Road, but in actual fact that's based on the original kind of outline business case costings there. It doesn't take into account recent increases in costings, and therefore I think that there should be a substantial revision in the cost of the North West Road on an upward scale. I mean, people have talked about 130 million being the cost of it. And lastly, you'll say you're considering applying to Department of Transport. When will that consideration finish, and when you're likely to have an application going in?
Thank you, Councillor Vasmer. Councillor Chalmers?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, Councillor Vasmer, the current funding pot or estimated funding costs for the road, as I say, is reduced by £7 million. We are liaising with contractors and suppliers on a constant basis, and those figures are up to date as of last week when they were published. They are not historical data included in them. So I disagree with you that the road is going to cost an extortionate amount more, like you've just quoted. But that's just a point of difference between us, I guess. As in when the request for extra funding will go in, we're always discussing with the Department for Transport, and we'll continue to do so. But there is no anticipated date for any application for further funding, because we are currently sitting within our budget envelope, so it's not needed at the moment, but we reserve the right to apply for and discuss further.
Thank you, Councillor Chalmers. The third question comes from Councillor Tracy Huffer, who is also joining us online. Councillor Huffer.
Thank you. Right, okay. So my question is, sorry, I'll try not and cough throughout. Youth providers in Ludlow have been informed that the foyer area of Ludlow Youth Centre can only be used for a maximum of 3 people. With the winter approaching, this will bring an end to current youth club activities, as they cannot be held outdoors in winter weather. It will also leave Ludlow Young Health, a mental health and wellbeing support project, without a home. Children are back at school. They are playing sport and engaging in social activities, both indoors and outdoors. They are allowed to cram into cinemas. Ludlow Youth Centre is entered through wide double doors and arguably has more ventilation than most venues. Yet Shropshire Council has declared that it is unsafe for youth activities. At the same time, it regards the building as perfectly safe for people using the offices, which once supported young people as music and chill out rooms. My question is, what legally binding government COVID regulations remain in place after the general easing of legal restrictions on the 19th of July that restrict the use of the buildings? How many Shropshire Council owned or managed buildings are currently subject to restrictions because of ventilation assessments? Which are these buildings? Ludlow Youth Centre is classified by the council as a corporate asset. What capital value does it assign to the youth centre in its accounts? And finally, can the council give a guarantee that Ludlow Youth Centre will not be sold or transferred other than as a building that will continue as a youth centre during the current administration? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huffer. Responding to that, Councillor Dean Carroll, portfolio holder, lots of things including assets.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you, Tracy, for the question. The need to ventilate buildings is becoming more and more important. The new Step 4 COVID secure guidance has been published on the government website and has more of a focus on risk assessment, self-isolation and ventilation, supplemented by cleaning of face coverings. Employers still have a legal duty to manage risks to those affected by their business. The way to do this is to carry out a health and safety risk assessment, including the risk of COVID-19, and to take reasonable steps to mitigate the risks identified. The Working Safely guidance sets out a range of mitigations employers should consider, including cleaning surfaces that people touch regularly, identifying poorly ventilated areas in the venue and taking steps to improve airflow, ensuring that staff and customers who are unwell do not attend the workplace or venue, and communicating to staff and customers the measures you have put in place. Now, in terms of your question about how many buildings there are and what buildings are affected by these ventilation restrictions, there are 15 buildings, and alphabetically they are Bridge North Youth Club, Canton Brook, Castle Court in Oswestry, Castle View Dance Studio, Castle View Annex, Drover's House, Edinburgh House, Food Enterprise Centre, Ludlow Youth Centre, Mount McKinley, Old Street in Ludlow, Oswestry Library, Shrewsbury Registrar's Office and Shire Hall. Ludlow Youth Centre is classified by the council as a corporate asset, was your next question, and what the capital value assigned to that is. In accordance with the council's financial asset valuations, as at the 31st of March 2021, it was valued at £851,000. Coming on to your final question, can we guarantee that Ludlow Youth Centre will not be sold or transferred? Work continues to be undertaken to maximise the use of these community-based assets to make them available to deliver community-related services or other council priorities for the locality. This may include other models of ownership or indeed a transfer to a suitable organisation to operate the building for the future. However, no formal decisions have been taken at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Hufford, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Basically, what do I tell our young people, especially as youth club starts on Friday, and the public, that the purpose-built youth centre would probably not be able to be used for youth provision again?
Councillor Carroll?
Well, I don't cover youth services, but in terms of saying that it won't be able to be used again, I think that is grossly inaccurate, because we have no idea how long we will have to carry out COVID ventilation measures for. So to say that it will not be used again is totally inaccurate. Nobody can say that at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Okay, so moving on to item number 6, which is scrutiny items. I don't believe we have any scrutiny items. Thank you, Tim. So we're now going to move on to the substantive reports through this meeting. Now, as I said earlier, sadly, Councillor Graham Butler can't be with us today. Councillor Steve Charmley and I were going to do this between us. Councillor Steve Charmley is also not with us today. So do forgive me, because a lot of this is now going to be coming from me, as I'm going to be presenting all 4 reports. So moving on to the first of these are all financial reports. The first one is that of the annual Treasury report. Last year, Cabinet received quarterly reports on Treasury management, providing updates on how the council cash, investments and borrowing were being managed. This report is the annual Treasury report, and it looks back over the whole of the last financial year, and basically it summarises how the council did. The Treasury team manages the council cash, making sure funds are in the bank when we need to pay salaries and suppliers, whilst trying to generate additional benefits to the council with cash that is committed but not yet spent. Last year, the internal Treasury team delivered returns in excess of the benchmark, something they have achieved, thankfully, every year. While the benefits derived from investment are very low at the moment due to the exceptionally low Bank of England base rate, the team still delivered an underspend of 3.21 million last year, mainly due to the savings against MRP. As you would expect, all prudential indicators have been met. I'm quite happy to propose that report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Motley, thank you. Do I have any questions on that report? I don't see any questions on that report. As in the usual way, if members online, group leaders online want to ask questions, please indicate in the chat function. No? Okay. All those in favour of that report? Thank you very much. Moving on to the Treasury Management update. Whilst the previous paper dealt with last year, the remaining papers on the agenda provide information on the first quarter of this year. The Treasury team is currently managing £170 million worth of investments and £304 million of borrowing. Over the first quarter of 21-22, the team delivered a return of 0.17%, and while this is only a tiny percentage return, it still delivered over £100,000 of income to the council and exceeded the benchmark by 0.25%. At the moment, many banks have to be paid to hold temporary investments, so any return is actually a real positive for the council. The appendices provide much more detail and indicate that all prudential indicators have been met. Again, I'm happy to propose that report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hurst-Knight. Do I have any questions on that report? Going swimmingly so far. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to the financial monitoring report. So this is obviously the first quarterly budget monitoring report for 2021-22. This means that it is based on information from April to June. The whole period of which, of course, was subject to the pandemic restrictions. The longer term impacts from COVID-19 and also Brexit continue to emerge as the year progresses. The projected revenue figure at the moment is very difficult to gauge, given how early we are on in the year, and quarter one is always difficult. A lack of clarity of how things are going to play out is also a factor. But based on the available data, we estimate currently that there'll be a £7.331 million overspend. However, due to the uncertainties around COVID-19 and future government funding, we're currently estimating an outturn anywhere between 2.5 million and 9.7 million. The 2.5 million assumes we receive more funding from government towards COVID-19 related expenditure and also our loss of income. The 9.7 million figure assumes suppressed demand emerges as a result of COVID-19 and no further funding from the government. You can see how difficult it is for us at the moment. With 1 quarter of the year gone, we've identified that 3.1 million, 24% of our savings proposals have been delivered on an ongoing or are being delivered on an ongoing basis, or we have evidence of delivery. Only 6.7% of the council's capital budget has been delivered, again impacted by COVID restrictions over the first quarter. The total financial impact of COVID-19 over the year is still yet to be known. As at quarter one, however, £7.6 million of COVID-19 unring-fenced grant has been received, 3.7 million for additional costs and 3.9 million loss of income, making up that £7.6 million. Again, I'm happy to propose this report. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Motley. And seconder, sorry, Councillor Carroll, thank you very much indeed. Do I have any questions on that report? I have one from Councillor Vasmer. Councillor Vasmer, over to you.
Oh, thanks very much. And thank the officers for this very detailed report. I've got 3 questions really. There's identified, I think, one-off savings of 16.147 million. And I'd like to know how these might be achieved. It could do with more detail really, particularly in regard to COVID, and are there things that we should be doing, perhaps aren't doing, to actually achieve some of those savings? Secondly, on capital in Appendix B, we seem to have we've got a slippage here of 49.4 million. Now it's quite substantial. The capital programme is something which this administration has kind of talked a lot about in the past. And I'd like to know why there's been this slippage and what we are not going to achieve as a result of that slippage. Thirdly, Councillor Carroll on the radio this morning talked about a 10 million deficit in adult social care and also children's social care. And I, myself, cannot identify those figures in this report. I mean, perhaps Councillor Carroll's got access to more recent data than we've got here, but I would like to know to what extent there is a huge problem in the social care sector, because I think that's one of the areas where it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen, and clearly. Given the situation with the finances and given the situation, I think, with central government, and it's unlikely to get more funding given what they've announced recently, then I do think I have great concerns about the financial outcome at the end of the financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Vasmer. I will defer to Councillor Carroll, but I'm pretty sure that what Councillor Carroll actually said this morning was that we are probably looking at a 10 to 11 million pounds budget pressure on next year's budget for adults and children's social care, not this year. At the moment, I couldn't possibly comment, but I'm sure Councillor Carroll will, but I think we are running to the budget that we actually had in place this year.
Thank you, Leader. Absolutely spot on. I'm delighted that Councillor Vasmer was listening to me on the radio at 7:20. It's hard to know whether anybody actually is listening, but obviously he was still a little bit sleep deprived at that time in the morning, because I thought I did quite clearly state that it was next year that we were projecting a 10 million plus shortfall in funding across adult and children's services. What I also explained on the radio was that we would have hopes and anticipations that that would be at least partially met by one-off government funding, as it has been each year for the last however many years, I can't remember, but we can't yet attribute that in any budget forecasts because we do not have certainty that that is going to be forthcoming yet. The current position as it stands is we're predicting a very small underspend in adult social care of £315,000 in this financial year, which on a budget of 125 million, I'm sure all of Cabinet and all members would agree is an astounding achievement to be this close on such a huge budget. And as is evident in the report, Children's Services are currently predicting an overspend of 2.3 million, but I'm sure Kirsty Hurst-Knight, the Cabinet member for Children's Services, will be able to fit in any details of that. None of that comes as a surprise. We know that Children's Services is under a huge amount of pressure at the moment. I will also come on to the comments that Councillor Vasmer made about delays in the capital programme. And I don't know whether members are aware, but there is a huge global shortage in construction materials, steel, lumber, bricks, and the skills needed to work on that, to work on sites. That's a global problem, not just something that's unique to this country or indeed to this county. It's also been affected, without doubt, by the pandemic, as there have been times when large-scale projects have been paused or delayed entirely due to COVID. What delays mean is literally that they've been delayed, but we still anticipate full delivery of that capital programme. So I hope that reassures Councillor Vasmer and anybody listening that both the social care budgets for this year are not facing a 10 million, for this year we're not facing a 10 million pound black hole, and secondly that the capital programme is still very much the capital programme, albeit delayed by causes outside of our control.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Just coming on to your first point about the savings targets, I hope you won't mind, Councillor Vasmer, but I might just defer to the Director of Resources that is sitting in front of me. I don't have the immediate detail of that to hand, as I'm sure you can imagine, a tiny brain problem. Councillor, I've just promoted him again now. James, our Director of Resources, would you be able to answer the question about the savings, please?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it'd be fairer to provide that detail in an email. There's detail in terms of those savings within the report, but I think if you're looking for more detail, I won't go through all that now. I think it's better to go through and send it through in a follow-up email if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, James. I mean, the one thing I would say, Councillor Vasmer, is that the new administration is working in a different way around the finances with James, and we're acutely aware of the shortfalls that we are facing. Obviously, quite a few of these are to do with loss of income as well. So, we're having. I can't say I'm confident, but actually I'm reassured by the way that the teams are working together now. It feels very, very different than how it's felt in the past. But again, just to come back onto what Councillor Carroll said, the capital programme is still very much there. It's just that we've not been able to spend that money for, to be fair, for obvious reasons. A lot of the time we weren't even allowed to go out of the house, let alone build anything. So I hope that answers your questions.
I just come back on the will the capital programme be affected by increased costs as a result of the pandemic and the shortages? That's a crucial question, really. So we will not be able to achieve as much as we had hoped when the capital programme was originally put together.
I'll let Councillor Carroll answer that one as portfolio holder for assets.
Thank you, Leader. If I understand the question right, will costs increases lead to higher levels of expenditure on projects? Is that the question? Well, yes, cost increases in materials will lead to higher costs to deliver the projects. However, contingency funds are built into every project business plan to cover these eventualities. And if there are circumstances where the increased costs do exceed these contingency funds, and obviously we will have to look at that on a project by project basis. But as I've said, there are contingency funds built into every project to meet just those kinds of delays and uplifts in costs.
I think it's also fair to say, Councillor Vasmer, that we're actually going to be reviewing the capital programme in the next few weeks anyway. So that will obviously be taken into account. As Councillor Carroll said, global pressures, we have to deal with those as any other business would. Okay, so unless I have any other questions on that, which I don't seem to, so we have a proposer, we have a seconder. Can I see a vote for that, please? Vote in favour. Thank you very much indeed. So now moving on to the final report of today, which is the performance monitoring report. Again, this is Q1. This is the first quarterly report summarising the council's performance against a number of key measures. You will probably have noticed that the report is starting to look a bit different from previous years, and that is deliberate, I hasten to add. The report covers key measures, our performance against them now and previously with the direction of travel, and where we have it a target. Many of the targets are currently being reviewed and set, so this will this report will improve over the year. The new corporate plan, or the Shropshire plan as it's going to be called, is also in development, which will provide a new focus for the report in the coming months. Members are also directed to the performance portal, a link to which is included in the report, providing information on all the council's key performance measures. The report shows 30 key measures, with 2/3 pleasing, either improving or remaining the same compared to previous reporting. Again, I'm happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Kirsty? Thank you very much indeed. Do I have any questions on that report? Oh, just snuck in there at the very end, Councillor Vasmer. Councillor Vasmer, over to you.
I think Councillor Buckley's got a question as well, but I just wanted to say this. You say it's been revised. Presumably this will go to council when you've actually finally agreed the new Shropshire plan, and we'll get more details on it, because obviously I think this is a kind of ongoing project at the moment, judging by this paper.
It is, Councillor Vasmer, and better than that, it will actually come to scrutiny before it goes to council. Sorry, Councillor Buckley, I didn't see your hand up because I thought we were using the chat function. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question. In the summary report under section 6.1, climate change appraisal, we're told the report does not have any direct climate change implications, which I find rather surprising, because when we go into the annex to look at the detail, 3 of the measures which are perhaps the worst performing, so the ones that have slipped the most, are recycling rates are down, and 2 sets of roads have now got a larger number of roads which now require maintenance, almost doubled on our previous levels. And as members will be aware, both through the additional money set aside for highways, and I hope that you're aware about the questions being asked about why rural depots are being closed down, that will affect particularly rural areas, and therefore specifically affect what you're calling unclassified roads, so those rural roads, how that could possibly not have any environmental implications. So by centralising a service and requiring large, heavy vehicles to travel twice the distance, that's obviously going to have an environmental impact. But there has been no environmental assessment made of that proposal. And yet here we see that there's going to be even more demand to repair the very roads which will become the furthest from the depots. So I'd like to understand why you feel there are no implications, why some assessment hasn't been done, and why it seems to have been just skimmed over in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I think forgive me, but I think you're getting slightly confused. This report itself is the performance, not the actual structure of what those matters you're discussing. I'm quite happy to get Councillor Charmley to come back to you about the depots, which I know you're very particularly focused on at the moment, and have had a briefing from officers, but continue to, in my view, raise matters that are not strictly true. However, I take your point about looking at the green issues of highways. We know that there will be green carbon issues regarding maintenance of highways. We've never shied away from that, but that wouldn't actually appear in this report because this is the performance, not the actual work itself. That's where that would be. That's where that would actually be set. I don't know.
Just clarify? Sorry, Lee, can I just clarify? So recycling rates dropping as a performance measure doesn't raise any implications for the environment?
Recycling rates I haven't come on to yet. Recycling rates, if a rate is dropping, it will have an impact, but that would actually come up in this report, whereas the depot one that you refer to is actually a different decision making process. Now, I'm quite happy to state, and I've said this to directors, that we need to, and Councillor Dean, I'm sure will be pleased about this, is that when it comes to looking at what the climate impact is of all our workings, we need to have more information in the reports. And you will see that when some reports come forward in the near future, you will see that there is a different way of looking at our green impact. Okay.
Okay, it might be more helpful to say there are environmental implications, but they'll be picked up elsewhere. I feel that suggesting there are zero implications gives us the impression that it's not being taken very seriously, because both the drop in recycling rates and an increased demand on rural roads needing repair, which are the measures in your report, both of those clearly will have an implication. Where you respond to them, I agree, can be dealt with in more detail, perhaps in other places. But putting in the phrase there are no implications rather gives us all the impression that it's not being taken very seriously. And I hope that this is being taken seriously and that resources are going to start to investigate this wherever, but to be a bit more honest that there are implications, even if this isn't the place for the detail.
Point. Thank you very much. Any further questions? I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, and I'll see you all in October, I think, or possibly the end of September, but we're not quite sure yet. Thank you very much indeed.